see, but it is there, and Shelley just lit it. I think Peter would like that. On behalf of family, welcome to this gathering. We come again, many of us, in hardly a month's time, to do this very important human work, to mourn together, to tell stories, to celebrate life, to give thanks, to carve out of the busyness of life a little bit of space to feel sad. And to have that sorrowing space in us filled with village. So that's our work for the next little while. J.R.R. Tolkien wrote, "The road goes ever on and on, out from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road has gone. Let others follow it who can. Let them a journey new begin, but I at last with weary feet will turn towards the lighted inn, my evening rest, and sleep to meet." And so has Peter turned his feet towards the lighted inn. And we will have the indulgence this afternoon of bearing witness to some stories of his sojourns. And he has traveled across this world and touched many hearts. He has gone deep inside his own life and met there places dark and dim and grim, and also full of light and wonder and beauty. And is this not the human way? My name is Bill Harder, and I have had the privilege of being a friend of Peter's for a short decade or so, and share with you a great respect at the privilege of having crossed paths with him. I'd like to invite Anna to come and share a reading with us.
I just wrote a little, I have a little poem here. The vital forces of heaven turn creation around. The world is happy and everyone is renewed. The peach and plum blossoms vie in splendor. Swallows fly in the painted rafters, shaking the incense dust. The sun's warmth melts the ice of the world around. Within the palace gardens, flowers are renewed. Gentle winds and rains enrich the people. Rivers and seas are calm. Gone is all worldly dust. This poem speaks of spring and renewal, and how the start of all cycle starts with rebirth. Grandpa was a man of an amazing intellect, infinite patience, and endless kindness. He couldn't have shown that more to me than when he helped me write a story. Although the seasons of his life have passed, I know he is beginning a new cycle, and although we won't be able to join him for this journey, I can take solace in continuing to work and expand the things he taught me as a reminder of the impact he left with me.
Thank you, Anna. As is the nature of gatherings of mourning and celebration, music weaves its way through our storytelling, the language of the soul. And we have the gifts of Joyanne and Daryl this afternoon to lift up the words that come from the heart that sometimes are hard to find, and music does that for us. This song, The Wind.
I listen to the wind of my soul. Where I'll end up, well, I think only God really knows. I've sat upon the setting sun, but never, 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 I never wanted water once. No, never, never, never. I listen to my words, but they fall far below. I let my music take me where my heart wants to go. I swam upon the devil's lake, but never, 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 I'll never make the same mistake. No, never, never, never.
Thank you, Joyanne and Daryl. Well, we need to hear some story about Peter, his long-lived life. The first perspective will come from Ashley, and then following, I'll ask Joan to come up, or come up together as it suits you.
2 weeks ago, when we heard the news, time stopped. There was no errands to run, no breaking news, nothing at all. The whole world stopped and took a deep breath and sighed. I imagined all these sighs of those who Grandpa's life has touched, and I imagined those sighs as a structure, vaulting above the earth, the girders and trusses, the stay ropes and cables, the counterweights and safety rails connecting one human breath to the next. For 2 weeks, my mind has been racing through my relationship with this amazing man who nurtured the kind of blazing curiosity that I hold against my heart like a warm ember. We are tethered by our connection to Peter, and today I would like to share a bit about Peter's life as it began, as well as a short memory of him as I knew him as a mentor and a grandparent. On August 27th, 1937, Peter's story commenced. His upbringing in Montreal intertwined him deeply with his Francophone heritage. The fourth child of Joseph and Helen, he shared the house with 3 older sisters, Anne, Margaret, and Mary, and then a younger brother, Paul. Throughout his childhood, a ceaseless curiosity set Peter apart. Favorite pastimes included tinkering with broken radios, experimenting with questionably dangerous chemistry sets, and riding his bicycle wherever he could. He was fascinated with the world of knowledge around him, even going so far as to read encyclopedias for fun. Academic prowess and athletic talent intertwined seamlessly in Peter's life. A newspaper snippet from 1949 envisioned a future of sporting success for him, Whether on the football fields, basketball court, or hockey rink, he excelled. Loyola High School in Montreal became the backdrop of Peter's educational journey. Active participation in everything from drama festivals, contributions to the student newspaper, and activism prevailed. Another picture shows him participating in various theater festivals. It could be here at Loyola High School that his early inclinations towards joining the Jesuits began. After his high school graduation, Peter embarked on a short but impactful journey in the Canadian Military Air Force Reserves. However, a higher calling beckoned, one of serving God and finding a sense of community. In those post-graduation years, Peter found himself in Guelph, Ontario in September of 1955, fully embracing the path of Jesuit training. His commitment to this profound calling was evident as he skillfully navigated through the 5 pivotal stages of Jesuit formation. On September 8th of 1957, Peter's commitment found a whole new voice in taking his first vows. His path led him to the Catholic University of America in the summer of 1962 in Washington, D.C. Among his favorite parts of this time in D.C. was witnessing Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, the sprawling Smithsonian Museum, and the cherry blossoms. During this time in America, he began to form his lifelong passion for photography. While immersed in the cultures of the Native Americans of the Midwestern United States for his anthropology studies, he developed his love and passion for the sprawling landscape and big sky. He devoted himself to the craft, sharpening his understanding and spending countless hours in the dark room. Inspired by the work of Ansel Adams, many of his prints are still in black and white and still hang in the homes of family and friends. In 1965, he completed his dissertation, his master's dissertation, on the early contact of the Wendat people of the Great Lakes. This phase of his life was a testament to his unquenchable thirst for knowledge and intellectual exploration. In his professional capacity, Peter spent around 2 years as a teacher at a Jesuit high school in Winnipeg, before assuming the role at Loyola High School in Montreal for a brief period. As a teacher, Peter was a fair, devoted, but no-nonsense instructor. Once, when I asked how he wrangled the notoriously challenging teenage boy, Peter shared that his go-to technique for vanquishing any propensity for disorder. First, he was to stand at the doorway and make eye contact with every boy who entered his classroom. Somehow he would say, boys are less brave about pulling antics in class if they feel singled out. If all else fails, he was known to use the dreaded nails on the chalkboard technique to bring order. Even as the role of the Jesuits played an integral part of his life up until this point, a new calling allowed him to step into a new chapter. In 1979, Peter made the decision to find community outside of the church. He found comfort, solace, and friendship with a nursing student, Sister Joy Raby, who had also experienced questions about staying in the church. Upon writing his letter direct to the Vatican to Pope John Paul II, he requested release from his clerical duties. In an interview I found from 1996 for Maclean's magazine, Peter recounts his time of transition in his own words. I think what propelled me to leave was a recognition that I'd entered for the wrong reasons. I'd entered the Jesuit order looking for something I felt was missing in my life, a sense of community. I didn't leave because I didn't like that kind of community life. I just couldn't live with that kind of constraint on me. In retrospect, what I was looking for was to live as the common man. When he finally got a job 3 months later after leaving the Jesuits, he adds, the first thing I did was to phone Joy, and I went out and bought myself a coat, a really nice, expensive coat. Before I leave you, I'd like to leave you with a short letter I shared with Grandpa a few days before he left to join my grandma. Grandpa, some people, not you nor I, because we are awfully self-possessed, but some people find great difficulty in saying goodbye when making a call or spending the evening. How then must people cope with saying the final goodbye? As the moment draws near where I must bid farewell to you, Grandpa, I have gained empathy for those long goodbyers. But I'll keep this short. Your legacy is woven into the fabric of my life, and my world is undeniably richer because you were a part of it. Your wisdom, kindness, and unwavering belief in the potential of every single individual will continue to guide me. In the chapters of our lives that you touch, your influence will forever endure, reminding us to approach each day with curiosity, empathy, and the belief that we too can enrich the lives of those around us. Grandpa, you've made me greater just by virtue of living your life. What seems to me like a loss now is beginning to show itself as the beginning of the greatest love story I've ever known. I am not ready to say goodbye, but I see how ready you are. So goodbye, Grandpa, at least now in the impermanence of this lifetime, because I know that your divine mission calls you elsewhere.
My name is Joan White. I am Peter's sister-in-law and Joy's sister. I am married to a handsome man named Dave White, and we used to laugh because Peter and Joy, last name, would be White if it was in English, but of course, it was in French. I'm just going to share some lighter, humorous anecdotes about Peter and our story as his family. Our family's memories of Peter are deeply interwoven with Joy's. It's hard to imagine one without the other. For us, our journey with Peter began with their wedding in Montreal, where Peter's family, and Peter as well, embraced us and spoiled us and made us feel so very welcome. For years after that, as we traveled back and forth from one province to another, that story continued. From the very beginning, Joy and Peter were a couple. They were committed to living a full life, living and loving. And Peter was an amazing man with very many talents, passions, and skills. Ashley alluded to his photography, but I wanted to also say that I had an opportunity to experience that, and Peter had many cameras. He had to have the correct camera. He had to have the right light. And if you were really lucky, you could be his subject. And then he would take off into the dark room and create a masterpiece. He quickly became in demand for weddings, baptisms, family gatherings, and the evidence of his work is in many albums. He commented to me just a couple of weeks ago, as everyone was walking around with their phones. He said, "Wow, look at that, a camera, a little snap, edited immediately. It somehow doesn't seem fair." Peter also had a great passion for music, from many genres. He liked Johnny Cash, he liked big bands, he liked Patsy Cline, and many, many others, including Rosemary Clooney, and you have to be a little older to remember that gal. He had many CDs, which he took very good care of in a library in their home, and playing that on a good stereo was really one of Peter's bliss. And books, oh, what about the books? And the shared passion of those books with Joy. One of their favorite holidays was to go to one of the timeshares that they had arranged ahead of time with, take good books, read, and then go out for long walks in nature. good books, good readings, bring new knowledge, new understanding, and good conversation. And as you get older, wisdom as well. And those timeshares, well, they shared them frequently with the rest of the family. And Peter especially liked the ones where they were on golfing holiday, because he had an innate ability to master that craft as well. But as a typical golfer, he also never thought his game was up to par, and so he was always looking for new gadgets and new ways of improving his game. And then when winter blew in, then there were the season tickets to the Citadel, to different festivals, and of course, tickets for the family to come and watch our favorite actor star in some community program in Camrose, Alberta. But of course, with all his skill, talent, and abilities, Peter's greatest love was joy. He felt like he was the luckiest man in the world, in awe that she would choose him to be her life partner. How rich his life was, he said, because of her. We feel that our life was very rich because of him as well. Then becoming an adopted grandfather to two little girls, Anna and Ashley. What an accomplishment for him. Helping raise these two young, beautiful ladies into the beautiful women they are today. How important family, friendship, and community was in his life, and how he embraced it all. So many acts of caring and sharing. We're never an island alone. For example, Lila and Robert would drop in for a coffee when they were in Camrose, and of course they would bring him homemade buns, which he loved. Frequently, they would head out to Barb's and take in Easter or maybe a family birthday. Even this last February, there was a gathering in Viking for a celebration of our brother Don's 80th birthday. Although Peter wasn't there in person, he definitely was there in spirit. Peter and Joy would frequently share Christmas and Thanksgiving and some birthdays with Dave and I and the rest of the family. And Peter was so excited, he got a chance to meet the two youngest members of the family, little Wesley and little Violet. He always did really love children. And then there was, of course, Marie and Dusty. They spent a lot of time with them and their children, and they sent me this little excerpt to read to you. Peter became part of the Crazy Cousin group. It was Crazy Cousins. It was almost better than Christmas when we heard that Uncle Peter and Auntie Joy were coming for a visit. From the day they arrived to the day they left, we had their undivided attention. Uncle Peter always took time to do puzzles, tell stories, and bribe us to sneak him more chocolate cake. Who could believe that about Peter, right? Chocolate and Peter, they were one and the same. It was always fun to pose for pictures and then wait what seemed forever for prints to come back in the mail. When they moved to Camrose, it was a happy time. We were so glad to have them close, and they always made an effort to come to every occasion they could, whether it was a graduation, a wedding, baby shower. The last few years, they started to drive out to where we were camping and spend the day with us, usually ending up being close to his birthday. So did he come for the chocolate cake, Or did he come to see the family? It was kind of an unanswered question. One Christmas, we had gotten all the kids' hoodies that said, "Members of the Crazy Cousin Crew." Uncle Peter loved them and thought he should be a member because he was the craziest of them all. And of course, a hoodie was made with the greatest great uncle of the Crazy Cousin Crew, and we were told that he wore it proudly every day on his walks so people would know he was the greatest. Our brother Henry and his wife Lorna had a memorable trip to Kitchener, and they got a chance to go out and fly kites. And there's a wonderful picture in their home showing that exact moment. And then there's Denny and Karen. One of the funny stories there is we were having a big birthday party for Peter at the Bruce Hotel. It was, of course, a steak supper that you signed up for. And Denny generally and generously would always be willing to buy a few shots for everyone to share. And Peter was really enjoying them. And so he stood up and he said, "Well, I think we need a toast to Peter. So here's to Peter's Peter." And we had a great laugh over that, and that stuck. And of course, his wife Karen was very proud of him, as was Peter. And our sister Paulette, she shared that she had an opportunity with her children and husband to go and see Peter and Joy, because Deanne was only a couple months old, and Joy really wanted to spend time with a small baby. We've enjoyed also Paulette sharing her adventures, like, jumping off a cliff in Cuba, going to the family corn roast, sending us funny jokes. Each person contributed in the family, just as Peter contributed back to us. As Peter's body continued to challenge him, his resiliency, determination, courage was inspiring. He understood clearly that his spirit and his soul were far greater than his aging body. This gave him the freedom to use that brilliant mind to find new ways to embrace life. Peter's desire to remain in their home for his last days was only made possible because of the dedication of friends and family. Each person dedicating time and love and a cool Timmy's ice cap or two. And in the quiet, serene, early hours of August 16th, Peter drew his last breath in the arms of Shelley, just as it should have been.
We have the gift of music again to continue the story.
I, the Lord of sea and sky, I have heard my people cry. All who dwell in dark and sin, my hand will save. stars of night. I will make their darkness bright. Who will bear my light to them? Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart. I, the Lord of snow and rain, I have borne my people's pain. I have wept for love of them. They turn away. I will break their hearts of stone, give them hearts for love alone. I will speak my word to them. Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart. I, the Lord of wind and flame, I will tend the poor and lame. I will set a feast for them. My hand will save. Finest bread I will provide, till their hearts be satisfied. I will give my life to them. Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart.
Thank you. These stories are perhaps stones skipping across the water, and when they touch down, they give the suggestion of depth, of deep water. We don't have the time, or we won't give the time, maybe it's more realistic, to be here for the requisite 70 or 80 days of story listening to be able to get the deep story of any one human. So the stone skips across and touches in a few places to kind of invite us into our own reflection. You knew Peter somehow, or you wouldn't be here. And the storytelling is really asking us just to stop for a moment and say, how did I know this human? Where did they touch me? How am I changed by rubbing up against this life? Invite Tim Parker to come up and to be another stone skipping across the water as we hear more of the story of Peter.
Before I start, I want to make a gesture or identify that I have made a gesture that symbolizes Peter's very great fondness for Augustana. So you have to see this. Well, let me thank you for coming to this event. In particular, I'm completely honored to be asked to speak about Peter, the person whom I held in great esteem. There were so many facets to Peter and his interests. I have been privileged to have conversations with some of his treasured friends who knew him well. However, before we learn about their recollections and impressions, I want to invite you all to take a couple of silent minutes right now to remember your own precious moments with Peter. Thank you. Now I'd like to ask you to do one more thing. In your own mind, think of a list of one-word adjectives or phrases that you would use to describe Peter. It'll be interesting to see how many words in your list will occur in what follows. So just take a few seconds to do that. Now that you're thinking about that list of words, let me continue with my tribute to Peter. I'm especially indebted to David Goa for his descriptions of Peter's valuable participation in various Ronning Center presentations. These would often involve presenters from many different religions, including Islam, Hinduism, and Judaism, to name a few. Almost invariably, the event was enhanced by Peter's perceptive comments and inviting questions. It was noteworthy that in these discussions, he was not preoccupied with a particular stance. Peter would bring seriousness to the conversation, and when he added his own knowledge, it was to try to deepen clarity and understanding of the topic of interest. What struck David as the organizer of these presentations was the way in which the spirit that animated Peter at these events was one of engagement, not of argument. Peter was always very interested in things he didn't know or understand. He had a humility in which, even if he had studied something, he knew he needed to listen more and ponder whether his approach in the past was still reasonable. He would also always be listening carefully and was willing to change and learn. Peter was always willing to engage new topics. This was amply demonstrated by another of his friends with whom he had weekly hour-long conversations. These included many long discussions about philosophy, metaphysics, spiritualism, religion, science, and medicine. He talked about books that he had read or that his interlocutor had read as well, and they shared books whenever they could. In this connection, I can also mention that Peter enjoyed reading sample chapters from my book on addiction and the brain. I had interesting discussions with him about this as well. I can also attest to his curious nature and his interest in a topic he wasn't so familiar with. When Peter came to Camrose for the first time around the year 2000, He drove past the Augustana University and insisted they stop so he could discover what courses were being taught there. When he discovered that there were Latin and Greek courses, he was sold and happy to make Camrose his home. In the years that have followed, Peter has always said how much he appreciated Camrose and the opportunities it offered. His enthusiasm for the Ronning Center presentations exemplifies this. Another good friend of his offered some additional insights. He was struck by the fact that Peter never complained about the various medical challenges he faced. Peter was an extraordinary storyteller and had a particular knack for making people feel comfortable in his presence. In particular, Peter was a sympathetic listener and very generous with his time. So much so that Peter was willing to undertake a lengthy commitment to be a spiritual advisor, which involved guiding a person he didn't know through the Ignatius rules for discernment. He was familiar with this process, having been the director of a retreat center in Ontario. This commitment was substantial, consisting of one session a week for 30 weeks. Peter's generous nature was made clear by this gift of his time. Peter also contributed his time by providing valuable volunteer hours. He had a passion for promoting mental health and was the chair of the board of the East Central branch of the Canadian Mental Health Association, CMHA, here in Camrose. I was particularly pleased that Peter was able to attend the event we had to celebrate the well-deserved retirement of the CMHA Executive Director, Colleen Swanson. Peter made his usual set of insightful and amusing remarks at this event. My involvement is that I am the current chair of the CMHA, although, of course, Peter completely upstaged me when he spoke. I'll beg your indulgence to tell a story related to Peter's time at CMHA. One year, he and Colleen decided to go to Ottawa to a conference. Because both of them came from the Montreal area, Peter suggested that they extend their trip and drive to Montreal to visit their siblings, Peter's brother Paul and Colleen's sister Loretta. By the way, there's one more thing you need to know about Peter and his brother Paul. You've already heard this, but they had a sister. Guess what her name was? Mary. Anyway, Colleen agreed to go to Montreal with the proviso that Peter would drive when they reached Montreal because Colleen had never driven in Montreal. Peter readily agreed, and the day to leave arrived. While she was waiting for Peter to pick her up, Peter called Colleen to say he was in the hospital. Somehow, and Peter was never quite sure how it happened, Peter had scratched his cornea quite badly and was now swathed in bandages with very impaired eyesight. He still insisted that they make the trip, so now Colleen, who viewed the prospect of driving in Montreal with great trepidation, reluctantly agreed. Peter reassured her that he could provide directions, although of course he couldn't see well enough to do this. Nevertheless, they made it to Beaconsfield, where both their siblings lived. It was here that they discovered that they had something in common. It turned out that Peter's brother Paul had coached Colleen's sister's son in some sport or other, so they were connected in that way. Later, the connection was made even stronger when Paul and Loretta ended up teaching at the same school together in Quebec. Thus, Peter's sense of adventure swept up Colleen, and they both discovered some important information about each other and their families, which otherwise would probably not have happened. Peter's ability to put visitors at ease became especially evident for people visiting him when he was in palliative care. His visitors commented to me on how easy it was to visit him and have conversations. Part of this knack was his great sense of humor and his ready wit, always ready to provide some wry comment that could reduce the tension at the right moment. I could probably go on at length extolling the characteristics of this wonderful human being, but to end, let me provide you with this list of adjectives provided by yet another of his friends. I wonder how many of these you thought of earlier. Humble, articulate, graceful, a scholar and a gentleman, bright, insightful, faithful to his prayer life, tolerant, witty, self-effacing, intelligent, and giving. Once again, let me say thank you to the organizers for giving me the opportunity to say goodbye, and thank you to a friend and inspiration, not only to me, but to all his friends and acquaintances. He will be missed by many, and what more can you add to that? I think that says it all. Thanks again for asking me to say a few words. I appreciate this honor. Thanks.
Stories in words, stories in song, stories in pictures. So we have opportunity now to see a few collected pictures, and each of them, I am told, are worth at least 1,000 words. There's that very lovely picture of Peter in the front where the guest books are quite a younger iteration of him. I really want to know that person. You know, if we knew Peter for 25 years, if you happen to have been privileged to have a 25-year friendship, that was less than a third of his life. So much story, hey? Well, I'm not checking my email. I just have some notes here. That's as much story, at least in this setting, as we'll bear witness to this afternoon. Perhaps as we go to lunch momentarily, we could continue the storytelling. Something that rises to the surface when we think of Peter. Thank you to our storytellers in all of your forms, and to you who have gathered to mourn, and to be bold and transparent in a sadness that our world is somewhat diminished because Peter is not physically here. And also to share our great joy that his stories are well woven into us. Peter's faith was important to him as it evolved, changed, and grew through his decades. And so we will commend him into God's care in words that would be familiar to him. I invite you to stand as you are able. We commend into God's care our brother Peter Gerard LeBlanc. We entrust him to his Creator. May he return to him who formed him from the dust of the earth. May Holy Mary, the angels, and all the saints come to meet him as he goes forth from this life. May Christ, who was crucified for him, bring him freedom and peace. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Momentarily, we will be invited to recess to lunch, to the gift of music from Maya and Art. We send ourselves off with this blessing. May the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord's face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you with favor and give you peace. Amen. Maya and Art, I invite you to fill our hearts with music, and as they play, you are invited to recess and enjoy fellowship and food. Thank you for the gift of our community this afternoon.
Must remember this, a kiss is still a kiss, a sigh is just a sigh. The fundamental things apply as time goes by. And when two lovers woo, they still say, I love you. On that you can rely. No matter what the future brings as time goes by. Moonlight and love songs, never out of date. Hearts full of passion, jealousy and hate. Woman needs man and man must have his mate that no man can deny. It's still the same old story, a fight for love and glory, a face of do or die. The world will always welcome lovers as time goes by. remember this. A kiss is still a kiss. A sigh is just a sigh. The fundamental things apply as time goes by. And when two lovers woo, they still say I love you. On that you can rely. No matter what the future brings as time goes by. Moonlight and love songs never out of date. Hearts full of passion, jealousy and hate. Woman needs man and man must have his mate that no man can deny. It's still the same old story, a fight for love and glory, a case of do